All right, well, this morning we're in Galatians chapter 4, starting in verse 8 through 11. Not a huge section here, but there's a lot in there, so let's go ahead and read that. Paul writes, "Formerly when you did not know God, you were slaves to those who by nature are not gods. But now that you know God, or rather, are known by God, how is it that you are turning back to those weak and miserable forces? Do you wish to be enslaved by them all over again? You are observing special days and months and seasons and years. I fear for you that somehow I have wasted my efforts on you." All right, let's just stop there. The first thing I want to draw your attention to is right there in verse 9 when Paul writes, "But now that you know God, or rather are known by God." Notice how quick Paul is to switch that, right? He goes, hey, now that you know God, he goes, whoa, I mean, now that you're known by God, right? Because who always takes the initiative in our relationship with God? Yes, just throw that answer out there, right? Yes, be bold. It's always God. God always does the initiating. So when he says, hey, now that you know God, well, really the truth is you're known by God because God always takes the initiative in our relationship with him, right? Even baptism. You know, we think, oh, the parents are bringing the child. No doubt the parents are. It's the faith of the parents. And of course, who gives us that faith? God does, right? It's always God that does the work, which makes it so much more astounding to Paul that God has done all this for the Galatians, and the Galatians are still wanting to go back and try to be God's children or earn his favor by falling under the law again. Right? And so Paul's emphasizing, no, you're known by God. He's already done this. Like, hey, yeah, good news, Paul. Now we're going to go back by the law and try to earn something from God. And so Paul is just mystified by this whole thing. Here's what the commentator Richard Longnecker said about this whole idea of us being known by God. He said, relationship with God does not have its basis in man's seeking, which is mysticism, or doing, which is legalism, or knowing, which is Gnosticism, but it originates with God himself and is carried on always by divine grace. And then Luther says this, beneath this simple statement, there lies concealed the lofty meaning that it is our function passively to receive God and his working within us. Our knowing is being known by God, who has also worked this very knowing within us. So again, who does the work? There you go. All right. So in verse 10, 11, let's keep going through this. In verses 10 and 11, Paul writes this. He says, that was 9, 10. You are observing special days and months and seasons and years. I fear for you that somehow I have wasted my efforts on you. So this whole idea of months and feasts and festivals, this goes back, the Jews celebrated festivals. Right? They had those, we know those. And what Paul's saying, this whole idea that they're going back to this is, it's kind of I don't mean to make light of it at all, but you've heard of the idea of a gateway drug, right? So the feasts and festivals are kind of a gateway drug to legalism, right? That's really what Paul's getting at with them. You're going back under this calendar that the Jews have, and you can see Paul's rivals kind of saying this. They say, hey, we celebrate these, the Feast of Booths, and we have our Sabbath festivals. You should join us on this, right? Oh, sounds like a great idea. We'll join, because this is what we do, right? As believers, we do celebrate, and we do too, do we not? We have special days. I mean, there's a special day right here for us right now, right, on Sundays. We have Christmas, and we have Easter, and we have Pentecost, and all these things. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is it's this gateway drug. They bring them in, hey, celebrate the calendar. And Paul's saying this is just one step closer to them saying and getting you to believe that now that you do the calendar, we also are circumcised, right? We also do these things. And so they fall right back under the law. So that's why Paul's kind of getting at them, after them about this whole idea of these calendars and these dates, because it's just one more step closer to them falling back under this legalistic stuff, right, that the rivals are trying to get them under here. And then Paul says this, right, I fear for you that somehow I have wasted my efforts on you. Paul went to Galatia, right? He told them about Christ. They received the good news. He's like, it's all for naught. Right? I just feel like this has all been in vain, that you received this with joy, and now you've just thrown it out the window. What's going on? He goes on with 12. He says, I plead with you, brothers and sisters, become like me, for I became like you. You did me no wrong. As you know, it was because of an illness that I first preached the gospel to you. And even though my illness was a trial to you, you did not treat me with contempt or scorn. Instead, you welcomed me as if I were an angel of God, as if I were Christ Jesus himself. Where then is your blessing of me now? I can testify that if you could have done so, you would have torn out your eyes and given them to me. So Paul had this illness, and we don't know what it is, right? We could say, wow. We could stay here and try to figure it out all day long. We don't know what it was, but what we do know is this: it wasn't just, he didn't show up with the flu, right? Paul had some kind of chronic illness that he dealt with, well, until he died, right? And so whether it ebbed and flowed or whatever, he had this illness that he dealt with. And what he's saying, hey, when I got there, you welcomed me. And you took care of me during my time of illness. But even more than that, not only did you care for me, you received my message, right? You received the message of the gospel in doing this. And this is a big deal, right? Because it's going to come up later as we read through this in terms of Paul's illness and them accepting him. But it says, hey, you accepted me and you accepted my message. You would have done anything for me, as he says here. You would have even torn out your eyes for me if it would have been possible. They were all in on this whole thing. Now when he says this in 16, have I now become to you your enemy by telling you the truth? When I came here, you accepted me, you cared for me, you believed the gospel, but now it seems that I've become your enemy. By sharing the truth with you, it seems now I am your enemy. And so I want to stop here for a second and ask you this: are you willing to do what Paul was willing to do? Are you willing even to sacrifice a relationship for the sake of the gospel? Are you willing to maybe lose a friend because you're willing to share the gospel? Are you willing that you might make an enemy in sharing the gospel? Because if we're going to share the gospel, or if we're going to be Christians who follow Christ, that's a possibility. It just is. The gospel can be very offensive to people. And so are you so passionate about the gospel? Are you so consumed with Christ? Do you so believe in the consequences of eternity that you're willing to roll those dice and perhaps lose a relationship if you share the gospel? Now understand, it's not our goal to offend, right? It's not our goal to go out there and make people angry. We shouldn't go knocking on. In fact, I'll tell you this, in college, and it was the way they used to do it. Maybe some of you remember this. Maybe your church you were at used to do this or something. But we had this class that we had to take as an evangelism class. We'd go out to churches, and they'd farm us out as their evangelism group, and we'd go to neighborhoods. It was dialogue evangelism. And you'd go there, and you'd knock on the door, and, in that time, people would usually answer their doors and would engage in conversation with you, and they'd answer it. You say, hey, I just want to ask you a question. If you were to die tonight, would you go to heaven? And if they said yes, oh, that's great, and pat them on the back. If they said no, or I don't know, they'd say, well, then we have to engage them and go, well, if you don't know, then you're probably going to go to hell, so let's talk about this. Today, people would laugh in your face, right? In our pluralistic world, first of all, they're not going to open a door. Second of all, if they do open the door and you say, hey, you're going to go to heaven or not? They say, I don't care about your heaven. I've got my own idea, right? But the idea was then that you put it before them, hey, heaven or hell? Well, I don't want to go to hell. That's right, you want to go to heaven, so here's Jesus, right? And that's how it was. The problem with that fear type of evangelism is it doesn't last. Fear never really lasts. It might get somebody in the seat to begin with, but it goes away. Right? The evangelism that works, what really works on people is genuineness, love and care and concern. Right? That's what works. Doesn't mean you don't hit them with the fact that there are consequences, there is an eternity with God, and there's an eternity in hell, one way or the other. But when you lead with that, that comes off pretty harsh. But even if we lead with the idea of being loving and compassionate and concerned, guess what people do today still? Some people say, I don't care about your Jesus. I don't want you, and I don't want your Jesus. Go away. That's a reality, is it not? But do we care about people enough that we're willing to try? Are you willing to invite a neighbor, a friend, a coworker, a family member out to coffee or beer, whatever you decide to do, and say, hey, I know what you're going through. Or maybe I don't know what you're going through, but I know you're going through something. Hey, let's talk. Let me tell you about what Jesus is in my life, what he means to me. Let me share my faith with you. Let me tell you about how Christ has helped me out. Are you willing to invite them to worship with you, to come to a study with you? It's a risk, is it not? Because they might say, I don't believe in that kooky stuff. I appreciate that works for you, but it doesn't work for me. You know what? Don't call me anymore. That could happen, could it not? But if we care about people enough, we're going to risk that, are we not? And that's where Paul's at. He goes, hey, have I become your enemy? And guess what? Paul keeps writing after this. He doesn't stop. He doesn't say, oh man, maybe I've been offensive. I should pull back. He goes, I was your friend. Have I become your enemy? I don't care because I care too much about you. You knew the gospel. Now you're turning your back on it. And I'm willing to lose you as friends to gain you for Christ. We have to have that same passion and concern for people. We can't be concerned about, well, they may not like me. Well, they may not. But if they come to know Jesus, I promise you'll see him again. Amen? All right, let's move forward here. So Paul goes on in verse 17. He says, those people, talking about the rivals trying to sway the Galatians, those people are zealous to win you over, but for no good. What they want is to alienate you from us so that you may have zeal for them. It is fine to be zealous provided the purpose is good and to be so always, not just when I am with you. This is kind of what's going on here. It's kind of the classic mean girl scenario. So the rivals have formed this kind of clique. Hey, we really know Jesus. We're following him, really. We know Jesus and we're circumcised. We're in the club. And so they kind of turn their backs, right? They're snubbing the Galatians and going, hey, we'd love to have you part of us. Love you to know our secrets of what we do, but you're not circumcised, so you're kind of on the outside, right? Be one of the cool kids and come over and get circumcised. That's really what's going on here. That's really what they're talking about, this idea of this they're not in this for your good. The rivals really have this sense of this self-centeredness. It's more of a numbers game, right? Now, I assume we'd love to have more people, correct? Every church would have more people because more people in the church means more people are hearing about Jesus. The problem is if you treat people like numbers, guess what? That's all they are is a number. And we no longer care about them. And that's kind of what the rivals were doing. They're treating the Galatians like numbers. We just need to get these people processed and through here. Snip, snip, and off we go. Is really what they were looking at. A number game. Paul, on the other hand, is not about the numbers. He's about the person. Right? Jesus is always about the person. That's why Jesus, when people walked away from him when he was preaching, remember he said, hey, if you want to follow me, you got to eat my flesh and these kind of things. And everybody walked away. And Jesus didn't change his message, did he? He didn't run after him and say, wait, I'm sorry, guys. They walked away and he turned to his disciples and he said, what? Hey, maybe you want to leave too. Right? It's not about numbers. It's about people who want to know Jesus. So we need to know people. So anyways, the rivals really don't care about the people. They just care about the numbers here. Paul, though, of course, he's coming from a genuine place of concern. He says, my dear children. So notice what he calls them. He says, my dear children, for whom I am again in the pains of childbirth until Christ is formed in you. How I wish I could be with you now and change my tone because I am perplexed about you. Now, I love this imagery that Paul has. He says, my children, I've given birth to you. And in essence, Paul hasn't he? Because in sharing the gospel with them, they received it. And as we receive the gospel, we are indeed reborn. So in essence, Paul is really like a spiritual mother to them, right? I've given birth to you. And I've never gone through childbirth. And contrary to what our society says, men cannot give birth, okay? Don't fall for the lie. So I've never given childbirth. I know a lady over here who's given birth to 2 children. I know anecdotal evidence of this stuff. I hear people tell me about it. I hear it's pretty painful, right? That's what I gather from all of this, that it kind of hurts a little bit. Here's Paul's genuine concern and love for the people. He said, I've gone through childbirth. I've gone through the pain. And you know what? I care about you so much, I'm willing to do this again. Right? I'm willing to give birth to you again. That's how much Paul cares for the Galatians. And again, I throw this out to you. Do we care that much about the people in our lives? That we're willing to go through the pain and the heartache and what it takes that they might come to know Christ. It's awesome if we come and we hear the message ourselves, but unless we are sharing it with somebody else, we're just fat, dumb, and happy Christians. We need people who are actually sharing the gospel, telling people who Jesus is in our lives. Now, Paul says, how I wish I could be with you now and change my tone. Now, there's two reasons that Paul wants to show up in Galatia. The first reason is this. Remember, Paul is dealing with this illness, this perpetual chronic illness he has, ebbs and flows, blah, blah, blah. Part of it is he wants to go to Galatia to, again, show them his weakness. Because the rivals were saying, hey, Paul's got this disease or whatever he's got going on, this illness. You know why? Because he turned his back on the law. He's getting what he deserves. And Paul is saying, I want to be with you so you can see we carry the weakness of Christ in our body. This is not punishment from God. This is just what it is to live in this world. And as you accepted me before with my illness and cared for me and heard the gospel, I want to be with you again so you can see. This is just what it means to carry Christ in my body. It's not because I turned my back on the law. It just is what it is. So that's the first reason he wants to go, to show them it's got nothing to do with the law. I want you to see who I am. I have not changed when you received me the first time. The second one is here when he says to change my tone. Paul's pretty harsh in this letter to the Galatians, right? And so he says, hey, I want to change my tone. Now, my guess is we've all received a text or an email from somebody, and we said, whoa, it's a little harsh, right? We don't really get the tone from it, right? It's like, why are they so angry? And then we talk it through, and maybe they weren't that angry after all. We just misunderstood them. Well, Paul's not being misunderstood here. Paul's really angry at the Galatians. He means for his words to be harsh in this letter. So there's no misunderstanding here. But Paul wants to show up, and he wants his tone to change in this respect, that now it's harsh, right? He's saying, man, I don't understand you guys. I'm perplexed by you. You're, essentially what he says earlier, you're idiots. What are you thinking? I want to come to you because what I'm hoping is my tone will change when I'm with you, because once again you will see, okay, that's right. What Paul said is the gospel. That's right. We don't have to be circumcised. We don't have to go into the law. Good. He said, so then my tone will change. It won't be a, let me slap your hand. It won't be a harsh tone. It'll be one of joy. It'll be one of compassion. It'll be like, my brothers and sisters, we're on the same page again. You now know what you knew before. That is nothing you do to earn God's love. He has already done it for you. So I'm hoping I can come, my tone will change with you. And then finally, this last part here. Paul says, I am perplexed about you. I am perplexed. That's a great word, isn't it? My guess is there are some people in this world that perplex you. Would that be a correct statement? Right? I may be one of those people. You might be perplexed by me. That's all right. There are people in this world that perplex me. But here's the deal. We cannot use that as an excuse to not share the gospel. Because it's tempting, isn't it? Because we see people and we're like, we're perplexed by them. And so we don't want to be with them. We don't want to be around them. We don't want to, because they're just, what is wrong with you? And so we go the other way. Just because we are perplexed does not give us the permission to not share, to not be Christ in their lives. Hey, I'm sure I perplex many people, and I know many people perplex me. But that is not an excuse not to share the gospel. Paul says, I am so perplexed by you, but I'm so passionate about the gospel. I'm so passionate about you knowing Jesus that overrides my perplexity. And I'll continue to share the gospel with you. So my final plea for us here is that no matter how perplexed we may become from the people in our lives or the situations in our world, we would not give up, but we would give voice to the good news of Jesus. That we would be people that would share the good news. That we just tell people who Jesus is in our lives. You don't have to memorize 1 Thessalonians. Just tell people who Jesus is in your life. Why does he matter to you? Why do you come to a church? Why do you read a Bible? Why do you pray? Who is Jesus to you? That's what I want to know. That's what people want to know. Share that with them. Let them know the good news and the difference it's made in your life. Perplexity, well, be whatever. Let's share the gospel. Amen? And that's probably enough for today.